and we have the technology. We need the will to bring this type of innovative testing to our K through 12s and to our universities and colleges.
That was Dr. Deborah Birx of the White House speaking with our colleague Kevin Cirilli earlier today. And now it's time for a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Here's what's going on, David Weston. Most stocks lower. Airlines, hotels particularly hard hit amid signs that the world economy has a long way to go to get back on track. Largest tech shares, though, they are outperforming. Here's where we stand. S&P 500 index down 7, down 0.2%. The Dow down 176, down 0.7. NASDAQ up 20, a gain there of 0.2%. Microsoft, Apple, Facebook all pushing higher there. 10-year yield 0.64%. Gold up 0.7%, 17.96 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude 40.82 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From New York, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. People of color are greatly underrepresented in the C-suites and boardrooms of corporate America as a whole. But the situation may be even worse out in Silicon Valley. Welcome now, Matt Carter. He's CEO of Ariaka. It's a global cloud networking company. Thanks so much for being with us, Matt. And I know it's a more complicated description of your company, but that does it for most of us. Give us a sense, though, of Silicon Valley and how bad things are when it comes to diversity, and particularly with respect to African Americans and Hispanics, for that matter.
Yeah, well, thanks, David. Well, it's pretty obvious that there's low representation, and so it really begs the question as to why is that? And a lot of it, quite frankly, has to do with just complacency and sort of the institutional practices that many of these corporations have. They go to the same well and catch the same sorts of fish and have been unwilling to broaden their outreach efforts. And so when you see that type of practice that's institutionalized and there's a lack of sort of urgency in trying to change those practices, you end up with the result that you see out here in Silicon Valley. Very few African Americans and Latinas in these corporations. And so one of the ways in which to sort of address this is to really call out their hiring practices and change the paradigm, and open it up and go out and try to recruit many talented African Americans and Latinas who are just not being outreached to.
Do we need to have a quota? I mean, I clerked for Justice Powell, and we were always against quotas. But as a practical matter, get this thing done, do you need that? I mean, Goldman Sachs is a backer, I believe, of your company as well. They've now said they're not going to take companies public, as I understand, unless there's some diversity in the board, right?
That's correct. So quotas has a real polarizing connotation. And I don't necessarily think you need quotas as much as I think you should be more open-minded around having a more diverse slate of candidates. I believe that if you had a more diverse slate of candidates, that you will invariably see that there are a lot of talented women, African Americans, Hispanics, and that they can compete toe-to-toe with, all the other folks who are being considered for those jobs. But the problem is that when you're not even in the consideration set, when you're not even being given a look at, that you end up just choosing from the same suite of people versus opening it up and saying, hey, let's have more of a rainbow slate of candidates. And I just believe that if you do that folks will be able to compete toe-to-toe with anybody else who's being considered for these roles.
Excluding you for the moment from this discussion, are there leaders out in Silicon Valley that you look at and say they're doing a good job, they're really taking it seriously? I even might look up to them.
Well, I think that's probably far-fetched. I would say that there are certainly some who are much more open-minded. I think Bindoff over at Salesforce has, quite frankly, been among all his peers much more vocal and much more supportive of social justice types of things. And it's not just speaking about it, but putting it into action in terms of how he runs his corporation. But I think a lot of folks, honestly, there's a lot of statements. But then it's now taking the next step. And the next step, David, quite frankly, requires courage. It requires you to be able to go outside your comfort zone. You know, it's easy for everybody to jump on the bandwagon and rally around, you know, statements, Black Lives Matter or whatever it may be, or I'm an ally, etc. But it takes really the next step, the courage, to be able to say we're going to put our words into action. And so when I look at Silicon Valley as a whole, I would say that right now is a good first step, that at least there is some awareness. There is statements that have been made. But I'd like to see more in terms of the next step. Let's put those words into action. Let's see if your hiring practices change. Let's see if your board composition change. Let's see if you're going out and recruiting C-suite executives into your top echelons of your corporation. Are you challenging your vendors and asking them, hey, you know, if you're going to do business with us, you know, we want to see that you are much more reflection of society at large. So it's action, and that's, I think, where we are right now. Statements are great. I think the values, people are aligned around that. Now let's see if we can put our words into action.
When you talk about action, do we need to go, I'll put it this way, upstream a bit in Silicon Valley? And by that I mean to make sure that venture capitalists, when they're backing outfits, are really paying attention to the diversity of the leadership of the company. And even beyond that, have people of color in the venture capital firms. I mean, there's a piece on the Bloomberg right now about that. There's a piece in the Financial Times today about that diversity at the VC level. Do you see that developing at all out in Silicon Valley?
I don't right now, but let me give you a thought here. Who do VCs raise funds from? Right? So you think about that. Who do they raise funds from? So a lot of VCs get their funds from pensions and other institutions, CalPERS and the likes. Hey, CalPERS, what are you doing? Right? You give a lot of money to VC firms, and what are you doing to drive behavioral changes, you know, with those institutions whom you lend money to? Money, by the way, that comes from a very diverse group of constituencies, right? You know, many workers and, you know, and pension funds have folks where those dollars came from them, from African Americans, Hispanics, across the board. So the truth of the matter is that I think you can change VC firms' behaviors, adopting better hiring practices, adding more people of color to their teams by putting the pressure on their money sources, right? Their money sources can actually drive more change quicker than us waiting around for VC firms to, through osmosis, make their own changes. Get the funding sources to drive that change. And I guarantee you that those folks will change faster than Usain Bolt can run across the field.
Really powerful point, sort of a whole new take on ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Thank you so much for being with us. That's Matt Carter, CEO of Ariaka. That does it for Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg.
Every aspect of our lives is connected.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday evening by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this rainy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine or to someone called Mac or Priya or Lewis or Zoe or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Newlywed to newborn. Ordering out to tucking in. Dream car to driveway. Isn't it nice when things arrive quicker than expected? Enter your location into our digital new car locator and it instantly tells you if the BMW you want is available nearby. So it'll be with you quicker than you might think. Search BMW New Car Locator today.
At the Halifax, we understand that as life returns to normal, it's a little bit different for everyone. You might feel good being out and about again. Or maybe you still feel safer being at home. Perhaps it's even a good time to consider moving. Right now, what matters is being wherever you feel most comfortable. And wherever that is, the Halifax are here to help. Online, on our app, over the phone, or in branch.
Terms, conditions and restrictions apply.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. And Jason, I feel like this kind of trade, we've seen this before, kind of taking a pause here.
Taking a pause as we take a reality check on what's going on in the world. Obviously, the virus not going away, surging in some places, although some of the numbers looking a little bit better.
Yeah.
I dare say I'm really interested in the collision of all of these things in Washington. And therefore, we're going to check in with Craig Gordon. He's our buddy, our Washington bureau chief, so can't wait to catch up with him because a lot of things flying down there in the nation's capital.
Yeah, and let's not forget it's an election year, so we'll see what he has to say about that. First up, though, let's get to today's trade. A little bit of a mixed market, little changes here, but a little bit lower when it comes to the Dow. Let's check in with Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much. Well, hello. Welcome back, Carol Masser. Happy Tuesday to you both. We've got the Dow, the S&P lower. NASDAQ holding on to a gain barely. Anything in the green today will be another record for NASDAQ. Up 8 now, up by less than 0.1%. Got to begin with the year-to-date number for NASDAQ. So far this year, NASDAQ is up 16.4%. It is up 8 points right now, higher by 0.1%. S&P Dow both lower. S&P down 8, drop now of 0.3%. The Dow down 174, lower by 0.7%. But got to stay with Bloomberg Business Week right through the afternoon to see how things shake out. Will we see another record for NASDAQ? 10-year up 7.30 yield there, 0.65%. Gold up 0.7, 17.96 the ounce. Crude up 0.4%, 40.77 a barrel. Stocks falling, airlines, hotels particularly hard hit amid signs that the U.S. economy's got a long way to go. In fact, the world economy has a long way to go to get back on track. That is the latest. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Did he hesitate? Was he not sure who he was?
Yeah, I was sure of where I was going, but I said to myself, I could get into the hotels, I could get into the airlines, but you guys have so much to tell our audience today. Why keep droning on? That was my attitude. That's what I was thinking.
Charlie. You never drone, just FYI.
You're very kind to say that.
And you usually remember who you are. Sometimes sometimes you forget just because you've been at home for so long, we need to get you back.
Yeah, well, my wife will tell you I'm not the person she married, so maybe I did forget who I am. Anyway, we're not going there.
All right, yeah, we're going to leave that to another time. All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Let's get right into the Business Week agenda now. As Charlie mentioned, we have a lot to talk about. Gina Martin-Adams is with us, Chief Equity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone from New Jersey. Also in New Jersey is where we find Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. He is there in the Garden State. So, Dave, give us the brief contours of this market. We heard some of the top-line numbers from Charlie. What do we need to know about this trade?
Well, technology stocks holding up relatively well, and the broader market not so much. I mean, Charlie didn't talk about airlines, so I will. I mean, you got United leading a decline in the group, warning employees that what's happening with the coronavirus in the South and West. is going to be an issue in terms of people getting on planes. The airline said it's seen a drop in bookings, especially in Newark, New Jersey, just up the road from yours truly. So, you've got United shares at the moment, the worst performers in the S&P 500, down more than 6%. And you see the other carriers going along for the ride, American, Delta, and Southwest, all lower here. So, that's a concern. On the other hand, you see some stories related to the coronavirus in terms of potential vaccines that are really getting attention. Front and center in that score is Novavax. Right. Stocks up 35% after the company got $1.6 billion from the U.S. government to develop its COVID-19 vaccine. So that definitely gets your attention.
Yeah, that definitely gets a stock moving. Let's bring in Gina, because Gina, I feel like things that might get the markets moving, maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, depends on how the earnings season comes out. We've got to get ready for earnings again.
Yeah, totally agree that earnings is a potential catalyst for stocks, in addition to potential policy changes coming at the end of July in the form of maybe another fiscal package, or at least an extension of unemployment benefits. The earnings season is absolutely top of mind for us as the next potential catalyst for stocks. I will say this. It's hard to get much lower in terms of expectations. Analysts are forecasting a 45% drop in earnings on a year-ago basis, which is just an extraordinary decline in history. I don't think you'd find a single quarter in which we've seen such an extensive decline. Nonetheless, that low bar should make for a relatively easy beat. The question is whether or not beating such a low bar will be enough for stock prices, and I happen to think that it may not be enough. What you actually probably need to see is also a little bit of visibility emerge from company management and with respect to the outlook. One of the most devastating impacts of the first quarter was companies just absolutely slashed all guidance and just said, we're not even going to tell you anything because we don't know anything. So to the extent that some of these cyclically oriented companies, some of the high volatility type of stocks can come out with some commentary to suggest that, hey, maybe we will survive. We have enough liquidity to get through the next couple of quarters, and we'll move into 2021 and things will start to look better. That could be really positive for the equity market.
Well, and Gina, to that exact point, you start to wonder whether some CEOs are going to want to start to differentiate themselves, right? To say, look, we've made the right moves, or we have the right liquidity, we've tapped the right resources, because I think, this is just my opinion, that investors are going to maybe not put up much longer with this idea of we just don't know what's going to happen. It's we don't know what's going to happen, but it's kind of your job to tell us what you think is going to happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that the smart managements will actually take the opportunity to kitchen sink as much as they can in the second quarter. Yeah. So, you've got a lot of potential volatility with, maybe things weren't as bad as we thought, but hey, we can take the opportunity to take this charge and kind of move past the second quarter. Everybody's expecting so much weakness anyway. Things will inevitably get better in the second half. Well, now maybe we can disclose just how much better they think, we think they'll get. And even if companies are saying, we're not anticipating a huge improvement in economic growth, well, okay, but you are anticipating at least some improvement, right, relative to second quarter. We know that second quarter was when all the shutdowns happened. We're no longer completely shut down. Right. What does your reality look like in a not completely shut down economy? And can we extrapolate that out into the future? So I do think the expectations bar is very different.
Right. And I think
that expectation is really about 2021 more than anything.
Right. And I think it's fair to ask CEOs because they've got to make decisions whether they need money, whether they need to let go workers. So they've got to be having some kind of forecasting going on because they've got to make decisions. So,
absolutely. And even for the companies that are really strong, what are you doing with all that cash? Right. Because one of the interesting things that happened in the first quarter is cash stores built tremendously. We talk a lot about cash flow declines, but cash stores also built up. What are you going to do with that going forward is a huge question that nobody's talking about.
All right, Gina Martin Adams, thank you so much. Chief Equity Strategist, of course, for Bloomberg Intelligence. Dave Wilson, quick tease of the chart of the day.
NASDAQ's biggest companies have become increasingly dominant, and there's more than one way to see it, and I'll give you a different way with the chart.
Cool. All right.
That's a great tease.
Good tease. All right, so Carol Massar, we've got a lot coming up on this Reality Check Tuesday.
Yeah, we do. And I feel like we're checking up on a lot of things. On the virus, on news out of Washington, the U.S.'s status in the world, on the troubled retail industry, and on Facebook's responsibility. Don't forget, they've got a big meeting going on. So on retail, Alan Ellinger, he's co-founder of the investment bank MMG, long time in the retail industry, doing deals, so we'll catch up with him. And then we've got the CEO of Zyper.
That's right. Amber Atherton, she's going to be back with us. Facebook obviously facing a huge amount of questions from big brands, big consumer brands. So we're going to want to hear from her about what may be next there and what folks out on the West Coast are saying about Facebook and its future as an important destination. Also, Dr. Deborah Birx, a familiar voice to anyone who's been listening to this station for the past few months. We're going to hear from her. Kevin Cirilli caught up with her earlier.
Yeah, and we've got a great cast of regulars, including our Washington bureau chief on new stimulus, and also Dr. Ian Lesbader, of NYU. In the meantime, Jason, let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day. One number that tells us a lot. Today's number is 1 in 5.
The ongoing coronavirus pandemic has caused millions to uproot themselves from their homes. In total, more than 1 in 5 adults either moved themselves, had someone move into their home, or knew someone who did move due to the virus. 3% of U.S. adults have moved either temporarily or permanently, and 6% say that someone has moved into their home because of COVID-19, according to new data from Pew. That checks out.
Yes, we're seeing movement in our neighborhood, including people leaving, but also people coming in and buying homes. So maybe getting out of the proper, NYC, if you will. Let's get a check on world and national news headlines. Let's check in with Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. President Trump may use his executive powers to require pharmaceutical companies to make drugs domestically to counter the country's dependence on overseas manufacturing. That's the word from Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, who spoke with Bloomberg.
The coronavirus pandemic has brought home that core elements of our medical supply chain are just as strategic to our national security as, say, nuclear submarines or aircraft carriers are, and have to be treated with that same kind of approach, which is to make sure we have core domestic manufacturing capabilities.
The U.S. drug industry is largely dependent on overseas manufacturers, particularly in China, for key building blocks known as active pharmaceutical ingredients. Coronavirus cases are rising in 39 states, including Georgia, where Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms admits her state reopened too soon. She appeared on ABC's Good Morning America.
It was too aggressive. It was too soon, and we're paying for it, not just in Georgia, but we're paying for it across the country, and people are paying for it with their lives.
Bottoms yesterday confirmed she has tested positive for the coronavirus after displaying no symptoms. Adding to the worries about a surge in cases, the personal protective gear that was in dangerously short supply during the early weeks of the pandemic is running low again. That's according to doctors, nurses, and some lawmakers. Deborah Berger, president of the National Nurses United, says there are shortages of gowns, hair covers, shoe covers, masks, and N95 masks. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think?
I'm placing stop on profit for euro at 112.93.5. So stop on profit at 112.93.5.
social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg term...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday evening by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this rainy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
What have you missed the most? A haircut? A visit to the shops?
Oh, you look lovely in that.
What about a nice lunch?
Fish and chips, please. Salt and vinegar with that.
Or an afternoon in a pub garden? Fancy a casual bike ride? Or perhaps something a little more intense? Or maybe you want a relaxing day out. Whatever you've missed, get out there and enjoy it again safely. Find out how at gov.uk/enjoy summer safely.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game. From rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
For our
hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Tech shares are gaining. NASDAQ is at a record. The S&P 500 index lower now by 0.3%, down 10 points at 3168. NASDAQ is up 1 point at 10,435, a gain of less than 0.1%. The Dow down 192, a drop now of 0.7%. 10 years up 9/32, yield 0.64%. We've got gold up 0.6 at $17.96 the ounce, and crude oil little changed, up 1 cent a barrel now at $40.64. Recapping equities mix, the Dow hanging on. Dow is down 191, S&P down 11, NASDAQ up barely, up by 1 point. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, this is one of those rub your hands together interviews, yes, Carol, totally. Because I'm so excited to catch up again with Craig Gordon, Washington Bureau Chief Executive Editor for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from the nation's capital and its environs. So, Craig, I am tempted to just talk about YouTube radio and the return to Sirius XM that both you and I are so happy about, but we have other business to discuss. And I guess I would start by asking you, as you look across all that your reporters are working on, all the inputs you're getting, what's the most important story in Washington right now?
I think the most important story right now actually is Donald Trump's handling of the current situation regarding things like the Confederate flag and some of these racial issues. Obviously, there's the stimulus, there's the virus, there's a lot going on, but we are seeing a real window into Trump's psyche as he starts to look at the same poll numbers we're looking at that show him kind of, blinking red across the board. Most of the swing states right now suggest that it'd be going to Biden. The country right track, wrong track number, which is one of the main numbers that people look at, in terms of the president's prospects of reelection, are all going, the arrows are all in the wrong direction for Trump. And instead of, finding a message to try to either unite the country during COVID or, some of the racial healing that might be available to him, he's actually going in the complete opposite direction. He talked again this morning a little bit about the Confederate flag. That was a tweet from yesterday, actually. He sent Kellyanne Conway out to defend his comments on that. Obviously, we all saw the speeches from Friday and Saturday night where he's standing at Mount Rushmore, a real chance again to kind of try to have some unifying words, standing under the visages of our greatest presidents, and really went pretty negative. So I think a lot of times with Trump, what you see is what you get. He is not a man who has a very good poker face, and I think he's worried about losing. And I think the more he's worried about losing, he's going to start lashing out in these frankly pretty ugly ways as he tries to keep Joe Biden down.
Does he not want to be president?
Oh, I won't put him on the couch quite that far. That's always been the question, right? No one's more surprised than Donald Trump on election night 2016. But he definitely, I feel like, he's a politician who kind of won with sort of one good trick, and that trick was Muslim ban. It was the wall. It was us versus them. It was sort of, speaking to the so-called downtrodden Americans and kind of stoking some of those darker impulses in the American psyche. I think that's how he got to be the president the first time. He's the president now. A president has a lot of tools at their disposal. There could be virus things, or again, some of the racial hearing. Even just economic message. I'm going to bring the economy back, which he sort of says a lot but doesn't do much. And instead, he's kind of going back to that one trick over and over. And I would respectfully argue, even perhaps in an even slightly darker way. The problem for Trump is that a lot of the country's not really with him. I mean, he won by the slimmest of majorities, wasn't even a majority, plurality last time. And even some of those people are scared about the virus. They don't like the way things are going with the economy. We know the seniors who were pretty strong for him in 2016 are kind of starting to drift away. And so, I mean, we all know Donald Trump's advisors have a pretty poor record of getting him to change his ways. But boy, this does not feel like he's playing a winning hand right now. And yet he keeps doubling down and doubling down and doubling down.
Well, Craig, we just have a headline crossing the Bloomberg about California seeing 6,090 new virus cases versus about 6,600 for the 14-day average.
We sold euro at the stock price 112.935, for profit £200.
And this to me was sort of the mystery of it. We had a terrific story out by Gregory Cordy and Mike Dorning just yesterday on the Bloomberg terminal talking about how in the very states where the cases are up, Trump's numbers are down. It's almost like a one-to-one correlation where the cases are up, the numbers are down. This isn't blue states like California, which you mentioned, New York, New Jersey, which obviously had its share of problems. This is Florida. This is Arizona. This is places he won and really needs to win again if he has any chance of getting back into the White House. So, it does seem to sort of even run counter to that. These are his voters. These are his states. This is Trump country. And they are suffering right now with the virus, and yet they look to the White House, they look to the president, and they're really, Trump almost barely mentions the virus anymore. Obviously, we went from the extreme of those nightly 2- and 3-hour-long briefings to now he barely will say the word, VIRUS. And I'm sorry, I think some of the voters in those places, again, maybe they don't want to wear a mask, and maybe they wish they could go back to the bar, and whatever people are feeling right now, we're all a little antsy. I'm in week 17, I work from home. I feel their pain, but I do think they're looking to the White House and looking to the leader of the country for some answers to help their states and their friends and neighbors, and they're seeing nothing, and that's a problem for Trump.
Well, and Craig, it's also interesting to see a shift in tone, it feels like, over the last week from whether it's Mitch McConnell or even Vice President Pence saying, wear a mask. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous to point that out, and at the same time, it's notable, right?
We have a story in the works right now on Pence's comments, because I picked up a little bit on that just as you did over the weekend, that even